working with Tina Turner on her Foreign Affair album.
Magic.
And she came in wearing this little tartan miniskirt. And she put her leg on the table and said, "Feel my thighs." And I thought, oh, blimey, what do I do here?
Do I or don't I?
Yeah, if I do it, am I some kind of weirdo? If I don't do it, am I a wussy, So I just went, "Oh, they feel great, Tina." And she said, "You can stay, honey."
Boom. Geoff Dugmore, welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
And a belated happy birthday as well.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, it was the most uneventful birthday I think I've ever had. I'm usually in some bizarre country. I remember last year I was in Beijing on my birthday.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of getting out of, I'd had breakfast, I was kind of getting dressed, thinking about going out and stuff. And my room bell rang, and I opened the door, and it was the management of the artist I was working with, and they all piled in with cake and champagne and all the rest of it. But I'm afraid this year it was kind of like the most wet blanket birthday you could get.
Well, how much more DIY can you do and get told off on your birthday?
I'm gardening.
Brilliant.
Oh.
So, Geoff, your career in music could possibly be a world record, actually, considering, for a UK musician, the amount of hit records you played on. I mean, it's got to be almost 100 top 20 albums and over 50 number one records.
Yeah, well, I think at the moment it's about 89 number ones or something like that. Something stupid. It's not something I really kind of. I mean, I know people know about it probably. Yeah. No, I don't know. But, I'm always kind of a little bit shy and reticent about sort of going, "Hey, look at me, look at me, look at me," In fact, I posted something on social media a couple of days ago in relation to one of my favorite, most influential albums, which was Jimi Hendrix's Are You Experienced?
Yeah.
And, all these kind of comments come in and everything. And I happened to make this comment about, I've got one of his drum sets. And after I'd posted it, I suddenly saw all these other messages coming up. And I thought, shit, I wish I'd never said that. This is going to open a can of worms that I should just have kept stum about.
Yeah.
But there you go, it's just, you know what it's like in this business. You do what you do, and you do it to the best of your ability, and naturally you always question just about everything that you've ever done, and you kind of think, oh God, I wish I could, I wish I could do that again, or I could have done that better, or so on and so forth. But I mean, it's just all about. I think it's just all about doing the best you possibly can, and being humble about it. That's to me, that's the key to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about it the other day and thinking, it's sort of like, how can I put it? You just, it's just that you just keep your head down and do the work. That's the most important thing, and try to keep your integrity intact at the same time.
Yeah, it's that thing of there's a lot of younger people, but I'm sure they think session players, it's all about being incredibly good at your instrument, and you can play like faster than anyone else or whatever, do the most ridiculous scales, but 99.9% of the time that's nothing to do with it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the song first, the instrument you happen to play second.
Yeah.
It's the instrument you play first, the song second. That is definitely the key to it. It's all about the song. It always has been about the song. That's what the sideman or the session musician, that's what his job is.
Yeah.
It's to support the artist and support the song. It's not about him or the instrument he plays. It's all about the artist, and you have to compliment and you have to adapt constantly to the different situations that you're put in, you know. Could be one day you're playing with Killing Joke or Richard Ashcroft, for example, and the next day you're doing, I don't know, some kind of pop thing. It could be Will Young, you know, and you're constantly sort of having to adapt each time you go to another session. You know what it's like yourself. You've been there. Yeah. And but I think it was. I mean, I do think the whole thing about you came from a band, I came from a band, and I think that has a very different. It puts you in a different mindset when you go into work with other artists. Yeah. Because you understand the dynamics and the interaction that goes on between the different musicians, the different characters, the producer, the record label. You get all that before you've even started on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's a very key and a very good asset to have, shall we say, to have that ability. And when you come from a band, you've got that it's us against the world kind of mentality. You know what it's like when you start a band. It's kind of 4 of us, the 3 of us, the 5 of us, whatever. And it's you against the rest of the world. You know, kind of
yeah, absolutely.
And you sort of, in an indirect way, I think you kind of apply that when you go to play with other artists. You know, you gather that, you get that team mentality going around you. And I think people really have always gravitate to that kind of positive mindset that musicians have, you know. I mean, you know what it's like. You can be the most incredible musician in the world, but if you're a miserable bastard, it doesn't work with you.
No, of course not.
You know, you got to have the whole package. It's the playing ability, the sensibility, the emotional side, the camaraderie side, the hang, it's a whole deal. Yeah. And I'm not sure when you know, in music colleges and stuff, the times that I've gone there to do things, I'm not sure they kind of go into that side of it enough. Yeah. That the young kids understand that is equally as important as your ability to play. Yeah. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that going on with a lot of these colleges and stuff. Personally.
Yeah, I mean, as you touched on with that whole, I don't know, YouTube generation where it's all about shredding and which is, you know, fine.
It's great, but you still have to boil it right back down to the basics, which is where can you use that in the scheme of the song? Unless you're playing with Dream Theater or something like that, fine, but you know, there already is one of them. So
yes,
you either do your own band that does that kind of thing, but you know, there's all that going on, and you know, the kids say, "Oh, I want to be a session musician." Well, forget that. Got a master is the most basic, and you've got to make that basic seem absolutely flawless every single time.
I'm so glad you said that because I mean, it's 10 years on and off. We've made some records together, an occasional live performance. But what I noticed about you, and hopefully I bring the same thing, is that integrity of making what you do, even if it's the most basic things, seem like it's important to you as a person. You know, it's like some things we played on and you go, we won't mention any names. You think it's not the world's greatest song. They may not be the world's greatest artist. And the part you're about to play may be just boom, bap, boom, boom, diggity bap, or whatever. But the way you deliver it...
Well, that's the thing. You know, no matter... At the end of the day, it's somebody's art.
Yes.
And they deserve to have the best you can give that. In whatever sort of parameters there are around. But you still, you know, you can't sort of just go off, that'll do, you know, because that is you're cheating yourself, you're cheating them, you know, it's game over kind of thing, you know. And I think people can see through that as well very quickly. So whatever it is you do, whatever situation, you know, you have to commit to it, even if you think, God, what am I going to do with this? There's nothing much, you know, what can I give this, you know? You still have to find some kind of little sweet moment in it somewhere, where even if it's the most simplistic thing, just something very simple that gives you that little bit of satisfaction, knowing that you just threw one little thing in there that was that was sweet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just it could be a bass. I mean, some of the bass fills you put on things have just been phenomenal. And it's you know it, I know it, the producer knows it, but at the same time, it all sort of fits into the general simplicity of what the song has to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think what you said about coming from the band sensibility to start with is where, obviously, when you're in a band, particularly when you're early doors, it's so important and you care so much. And probably not that good a musician as well, because of the lack of experience.
We're all learning, yeah.
We're all learning. And it's that passion and care for what it is you're doing. If you can then translate that when you're working with other people, and socially you get on with people, it's...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure it was the same with you with Ocean Colours. I mean, the band that I had, it was the same bunch of guys. We all met at school when we were 12 or something like that, know. And then we all came to London, and there was 8 of us living in this little 2-bedroom flat above a butcher's shop, And, we had absolutely nothing but a sack full of dreams, so much energy, so much enthusiasm for it, so much passion for it and drive, that it just, it carried us through to it, And, I mean, we used to come out with the most harebrained stuff. We had hooked up with this guy called Peter Ashworth, who was a really well-known photographer. He was doing Eurythmics and all sorts of stuff at the time. And he had this concept for us, and along with ourselves, but it was we were all dressed in these white gymnastic outfits and stuff, and on the old grey whistle test. And we used to plug the amps. The guys used to plug their the guitars into chairs that were hanging from the ceiling, and then out of that to their amps, which were all behind screens. I mean, we were, it was kind of those days of, Devo and Kraftwerk, and, it was that kind of like, right, okay, here we go, anything's possible sort of stuff. But it was tremendous fun. It was great fun, and you learn so much through the process as well.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to know from you, when you were sort of starting out, did you ever play? I mean, did you play in covers bands at any point or anything like that? Or?
I never did,
Right.
and I know you did as well. And I was talking to one of the guys at Two Door Cinema Club a couple of weeks ago, and that's how he started as well, as a drummer. So it was learning to appreciate and learn really quickly loads of songs, understand how songs go, how the drums then can help the song, and then joins a band.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about having done that was, I know I was playing in that kind of thing when I was about 15 and 16 and stuff. But I think it was also that element of learning a lot of different styles of music. Because back then it could have been Pretty Vacant, followed by ABBA, followed by Leonard Skinner, followed by whatever, know. And I wasn't really particularly aware at that point about this is rock, this is pop. Well, yeah, you kind of knew, of course, but it was just the song was great. And that, it comes back round to that thing about the song, because that's what I've always been about, is the song first and the drums second sort of thing,
Yeah.
I'm not, I wouldn't put myself out there as being, a Craig Blundell or Steve Vai, who are both phenomenal in their way, but it's not my bag, and I appreciate what they do immensely. But I'm just all about the song, That's just really what I've always been about.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously it was the whole band thing as well, and obviously you started with playing guitar first, didn't you? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I had. Well, I wasn't. My parents wouldn't let me have a drum set.
Well, obviously, which parents would?
Who does, exactly? But they bought me an electric guitar when I was 12.
Wicked.
And so I learned to play that enough to play songs and stuff. And we actually made our first demos when we were 12.
Wow.
In this little 4-track studio in Glasgow. It's a gospel recording studio. One Saturday afternoon, And then we sent them all off to record labels. Can you believe that? And I found some of the letters the other day when I was having a clear out, and they're so cute. Oh, we have a Marshall 4x12 amplifier and a Premier drum set.
Brilliant.
And, we thought, this is it. We're on our way. How naive can you be?
Yeah. Brilliant. Love it. But,
we had, coming from Glasgow, you're, one side of you's got that kind of tough street thing, and the other side of you is just so naive you couldn't imagine, especially back then, because prior to internet or any of that kind of stuff. And when we got our first deal when we were 16, we went to London and worked at Mayfair Studios in Morton Street when it was there. Anyway, we did this promo photo shoot, and there was this character called Norman Duval, the guy that was organising it. And he said at the end of it, he said, "Oh, boys, right, okay, and now we'll have some shots of you naked." And we were kind of like, what? Then, of course we didn't do it.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, what? All the craziness that you kind of imagine the music business, and there it all stars.
Yeah, brilliant. So that was the Europeans.
Yeah, that evolved into the European.
Yeah. So then you made 3 records together, wasn't it?
We did 3. We did the first one with a guy called Vic Coppersmith Heaven.
Oh, right, yeah.
Who I believe is now the music attaché for the UN or something like that.
Okay, fair enough.
And then we did a live album. And then we did a third one with a guy called David Lord. And Warren Livesey was engineering that. And it was one of these bands that I think we were a bit of a sort of an enigma, because we could sell out 2,000-3,000 capacity places, but we couldn't translate it into record sales.
Right.
It's just, I think we weren't quite one thing and we weren't quite the other, if you know what I mean. But of course, when that split up, it's kind of like this had been childhood friends from 11 or 12 years of age, and you get to 24 and suddenly this dream that you've all had all your life just implodes on you. And so I was very fortunate that I got a call from Joan Armatrading.
Right, okay.
Been on A&M, which is who we were with. And she asked me to come and play on her record. And that was my first experience of being a session guy.
Right.
Because before that, I always thought a session guy was somebody that played in the West End.
Yeah.
I didn't really have this a real concept about what that was all about. So that was that, and I worked with her, and then I got a call from another producer friend called Nick Lawney, who now does Nick Cave in the Bad Seeds and all. And I did a record with Tim Finn from the Finn Brothers, just when they were on the crossover from Split Ends into Crowded House. And I went out to Australia and New Zealand and worked there for about 6 months or something like that. And then, one thing led to another, and you get on this roller coaster ride, and you become, unwittingly, get involved in this whole kind of scene, But it wasn't something I kind of set out to do. Most, just about everything that's always happened is just kind of fate, if you know what I mean. I never searched for it as such. I think in this business, I'm sure you'd probably agree, there's a very thin line between enthusiasm and desperation.
Absolutely. And desperation is so unattractive.
It's very unattractive on every level. But, it's... somebody wants to... Yeah. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. So, obviously, you kind of then became a session player without even thinking of having a career as a session player.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
It wasn't on my agenda. You know, my agenda was to start another band and do all of that kind of thing. But I kind of fell into it until I had. Now let me get the timing of this right. I think it was about 1991, and I had been in New York working with Debbie Harry on one of her solo albums at Electric Lady Studios. And actually, there's a great story about this. The first day I went to the studio with her, she arrived at the studio with a whip for me, like a, and I kind of, well, what's the omen with this? You know? But it was just a bit of fun, no more, no less. But she was fantastic to work with, and Chris was great. You know, he had a great apartment down in the meatpacking area of Manhattan. And in the basement, we used to go and shoot rats in the basement. And then he would mount them on frames. All sorts of crazy stuff, you know.
Yeah.
The usual. So then, 1991. I came back from that, and I was doing Stevie Nicks from Fleetwood Mac, her solo album. And at the end of that, I went to have some coffee one day with a guy called Chester Kamen, who was a guitar player with Brian Ferry. And I think he had just finished one of Madonna's albums.
Right.
Steve Sadelnik might have come across him at some point, I'm not sure. And we were having a coffee and stuff and talking, and we kind of felt we had got on this treadmill, and we kind of had lost sight a bit about why we'd got into playing music in the first place. So basically within a sort of afternoon, we'd sold everything we had, and we rented a bedsit in Notting Hill for about 18 months and just sat and wrote songs every day.
Wow.
And then we got a record deal with Epic Records, with Muff Woodhead. And we released one album, went on tour with Jeff Healey. And then the whole thing collapsed.
Wow.
And so that was all that time wasted. But it wasn't wasted in reality, because it sort of just put everything back into perspective, if you like. And then, you know, it wasn't a treadmill anymore. There was more of a sort of definition of what it was that I was doing, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it served a great purpose in many ways, and I think sometimes it's good to shake things up and get inspired again, and you know, really sort of get back to the reasons why, you know, in the whole get-go of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's that thing, because it's a precarious place to try and make a living anyway. You know, it's quite frankly ludicrous thing to do. Quite frankly, quite ludicrous thing to want to do, isn't it?
When you think about it, you know, I mean, the number of times when my boys were young and you'd go and pick them up in the playground, and, you know, there's the other dads with the suit and tie, and there's me, you know, with the long hair and the goatee and the rest of it. And what do you do? And, you know, I play drums. And, yeah, but what do you really do?
Yeah.
You know? That old chestnut.
Yeah. Have you got any gigs over the Christmas period?
Yeah.
But I suppose it's that thing, like you're saying, you know, so you get in, like, you know, Notting Hill, doing a load of writing, get a deal, that then go on to all that kind of falls to pieces. But that's you kind of, I suppose, in a way, plugging back into making music for yourself again.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was like the feeling in the first instance, you know, when you fell in love with music.
Exactly, because with the first band, I probably wrote about 85% of the music on that.
Right.
Lyrics were always difficult for me. You know, I've got books and books and screeds of stuff, but every time I look at them, I think, oh, that's rubbish. You know, you know, or maybe I'm just too self-conscious to actually, you know. Not that I haven't tried on many occasions, but I'm so personally critical about it, and I think I need to do it from a therapy point of view, just to sort of prove a point to myself. So yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. It was getting back to the motivation that that inspired you to get into it in the first place. And the songwriting aspect was always really important for me. I think also because you've written songs, when you go to play on other people's records, you've got a far better appreciation of how the song has been constructed and what it requires. Because, I mean, touching on this subject again, I think also you have to be very kind of emotionally open. You know what it's like when we did one of Richard's songs, and at the end of it, I was not in a good emotional state. It was very tough. And I find that happens quite a lot when I'm making records. You get so into the vocal, because the vocal is dictating so much of the dynamic and the energy or the sort of melancholy or whatever it is that is going on in the song, that if you're not emotionally kind of open, you're never going to be able to put that kind of feeling into it. It's not all about just hammering away at it. There's a lot of subtlety. And again, there's a massive difference between working in a recording studio with an artist and working live.
Absolutely.
They don't just do that. It's a whole different ballgame. Even going from playing in small clubs to playing in huge stadiums, that's a massive difference in that as well. I mean, in a small club like Ronnie's or Scott's or something like that, you can all the subtlety. You can hear it, you can feel it, you can smell it, or whatever. In a stadium, it's a whole different thing. It's got to be much more simplistic, the approach to it. The dynamics can be almost far greater in a stadium than they are in a small club in many respects. So it's all a huge learning curve from the beginning to the end, and we never learn it all. We just gather knowledge, if you like, and experience. I think is probably it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, you've done all the songwriting, all the playing. That is then informs the work you do as a producer as well, doesn't it?
Of course, because you have a far better kind of far better understanding, and you can. I really love working with young bands. I find that really, really exciting. I love their energy. I love their enthusiasm, and it's just lovely to be able to help them realize their dream. And having worked with many producers over the years, I think as a producer, the number one thing is always to remember it's not your record, it's their record. I don't know if you've ever had that kind of experience where a producer can be a little bit too dominant in his views.
Oh yeah.
And of course, we've all experienced it, like as you say. And I think that the producer's job is really to capture and to guide what it is their vision is. And again, I think it's so much of it is experience. I mean, I'm not the world's greatest recording engineer. It's just not my bag. Again, it's the music side of things. I'm a bit old school in that sense, I've got to admit. And I think there was a big turnaround, a big change happened in maybe the sort of early mid 80s when a lot of engineers became producers suddenly. And whether of course, they were phenomenal on sounds and all
Technical
the rest of it,
bit,
but whether they were really best qualified to determine the song structure and arrangements and stuff, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that thing I was talking to David Ehringer, who produces the Manic Street Preachers, and he's worked with The Who and Kylie and all kinds of stuff. And we were talking a couple of days ago about what is a producer, because he's done engineering as well and then became a producer. And I think a lot of those engineers who became around the 80s time, great, okay, I'm really good at the slick production. I know how all the chain of sound works. But then the producer then has to be a buffer with the record label as well. So to try and realise the artist's vision, but to translate that into something that the business interests are then happy with as well. So it's like trying to make art that will sell enough to make more art.
Yeah, of course. And that was, I think that was the days also when it was possible to have a career as an artist. It's pretty difficult these days, I think, because so much of it is the one shot scenario. And you look at, it's interesting when you look at artists that still put bums on seats, if you like. And it still comes back around to your Claptons and the Who and, all these kind of acts that have got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 albums behind them. I think it'll be interesting to see what the next generation, are we going to see Beyonce at 60 still selling out stadiums? Possibly not. I don't know. But you get the point. There's these kind of artists are still selling tickets, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the current situation as well. I mean, who knows when it's gonna come around? Yeah. I mean, I was talking to does the monitor engineer who's worked there for 10 years. He had 9 months worth of work just taken off the table straight away, but because his CV, if you like, or the way people know him is as a live monitor engineer, he's not even getting calls to do a mix of a track or do a remix from his home studio. Yeah, it's that entire situation.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, there's no doubt about the fact that everything is kind of on hold right now. Everybody's trying to sort of figure out how to move forward. I don't think it's been defined yet by any manner of means, and I'm not sure when it will be defined. Maybe in another 3 or 4 months' time, there might be, okay, this is the route that we're going to have to take, and things might start to take over a little bit, but not in the way that we've known it. Yeah. I think there'll be a lot more home stuff going on, which is a shame because music has always thrived from the whole interaction with people.
Absolutely.
The interaction musically, the interaction socially, that's how the whole industry has kind of functioned. Yeah. So, and it's, as much as, at the moment, it's saturated with everybody putting themselves out there, which is great. But, I think it's, for me personally, I'm kind of wanting to just sort of sit back for a minute and see where this is going before I kind of decide to sort of come into the arena, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting what you said about the interaction and collaboration of people together. Obviously, I mean, a lot of it, sort of beat maker, DJ producers do a lot of their stuff remotely, so they might get a guest vocalist in, and they'll just send them the track and they'll sing on it and get it back. Yeah. Which is, completely valid. It's like Tame Impala does everything on his own. Occasionally we'll have some musicians in, but generally does it on his own, in his own space. But then I think the vast majority, or the other half of music, if you like, which is kind of stuff that we make, is based on that interaction.
Of course.
It's like the first time we played together, the session, I'd never met you before, the session that got held up by 8 hours because you were on your way back from Paris and there'd been a dust cloud from a volcano, so all flights were cancelled, so you then had to get on a train. And then I think we were working with a producer, Chris Potter, who some people may not know, but we will be talking to him. I think he likes to finish at 10 o'clock at night so he can go home. I think you got to the studio about 8:30, sound check your drums. By 10 o'clock, we'd recorded 2 tracks. And it felt like we'd been playing together for years. Yeah. Even though we just met.
Yeah. But that's one of the great things about, for me, with playing with you. It's just, we just sort of clicked instantly. It was a very natural, thing. I mean, I think the fact that we kind of hit it off socially from the get-go, when we actually started to play together, it became just that extension. Do you know what I mean? And it's always been so easy, with you. Some people it's a little bit more not difficult, but you have to take a different sort of way of negotiating
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
But then you could level that same sort of idea against a lot of things in life too. But some people you instantly just gravitate to, and it works.
Yeah.
Instantly. But I mean, I find it difficult to believe that just constantly doing remote recording will create the same atmosphere, will create the same possibly magical moments that happen when two people are playing together, because it'll be a case of one thing has already been defined.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're going to get into a situation where you kind of go back and forward and back and forward and back and forward. But even still, you don't get that magic moments of when you're listening to what the other musicians are doing and you play off that and vice versa. I hope it doesn't, the whole situation doesn't happen too long, because I think it'd be really sad if we lost that in a year's worth of recorded music, for example.
No, absolutely. I mean, the way you just described it, and 1,000% agree. That's like almost like a professional and experienced version of when you formed the bands when you were kids, playing in a garage or the village hall, where it's like you're just jamming, and then those little magic things happen. Whereas if you formed a band online,
and like,
it's all too defined to get that little organic thing of like, wow, what just happened there? That was fantastic, which is that interaction in real time without any time lag, because the person's there, or just through a piece of glass,
Yeah. I mean, a wonderful example of that, I think, was when I was doing that Stevie Nicks record I was talking about, with Tony Levin was playing bass on it. And we went into the studio and we both thought we were just sound checking. Because like the first, we'd listened down to the track a couple of times. And we went in and I was playing, he was playing. And there was a kind of breakdown between the end of the first chorus and the start of the second verse. And I played this really quite simple fill, just that to him. And I thought, I didn't really execute that again. I'm going to have another go because I know there's another bar coming up. And so it was a complete accident, total accident. And we finished the song, and I was kind of like, how's it sounding, kind of thing. And Stevie goes, that's it, it's done. I was like, well, hang on a minute. She said, no, it's brilliant. I love that.
Perfect.
That's it. It was first take, not even realizing that, the sounds were okay. I think the engineer was still kind of fiddling a little bit as we were going along, But it just captured that moment, that kind of interaction going on. But I think the fill had sprung off something that Tony had done, and I sort of repeated it, if you like. It was one of those kind of things. But that's, how do you capture that in 4 screens?
Yeah.
It's
you can't. Yeah, I would think, say, even with increasing technology, so there's like 0 time lag, or it's like, a millisecond that no one can even tell.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, because it's got to be a different approach, and I think that's also why, without sounding too old-fashioned, why, going back to what you were saying about the old-fashioned artists, Clapton's, etc., the Who and all that, will put bums on seats anywhere, because the way the music was made, because it's got that humanity to it.
Exactly.
Which, unless you completely erase the humanity on purpose, like Kraftwerk, and then you're creating a different form of art, which goes counter to that. But if it's somewhere in between, where you're trying to recreate musicians interacting with each other, but they're not together. Yeah.
It's difficult to see how that can work particularly well. But I think it'll be really interesting to sort of see. I reckon the sort of whole pop phenomenon could be what will pass through this stage, where it's pretty much kind of manufactured music, if you like. And I think there'll probably be a lot of music videos where it'll be, the 3, 4, 5 or whatever people who played their parts kind of are cut into something, some way of shape or form in a music video to be able to promote it.
Yeah.
But then it used to be that you did a tour to support an album, but I think you do an album to support a tour nowadays. So without that possibly not being able to happen till, the latest thing I heard was possibly spring next year, but more realistically probably summer to the back end of next year. Yeah. Be interesting to see how the labels can keep producing new music, or the variety of new music, that still has some kind of feel and spontaneity and vibe in it. Yeah. Even with, as you say, the way that technology is, it's incredible. I mean, if we didn't have it, we'd be even more up shit creek without a paddle.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I think it's that thing because we can access music so quickly and generally for free now. That's why more people go to concerts. Yeah. Because they get the music and then they want the human version of it. If it is Daft Punk on some decks, or it is, I don't know, Two Door Cinema Club playing their tunes in an arena, it's people still want the human realization of it in front of them.
And they want to be in the gathering.
Yes.
With other people to enjoy it, And I saw that I think it was in Germany and Sweden, they were having these drive-in raves. And I was kind of looking at it and thinking, it's great that they're doing it. You've got the DJs up there, and they pull the fader out and you hear all these car horns going, and you're well, how are you really kind of getting off on this sitting in the car, But I mean, bang on for trying it, absolutely. But I mean, that might be the future for a while. No,
absolutely.
Driving shows,
driving gigs. It's a huge arena, but there's only 300 people here.
Yeah, exactly.
There would have to be some very expensive tickets.
It's extraordinary
to cover the overheads.
But on the other hand, it might bring everything back around to a far more grassroots level once we're.
Yeah, well, I think they will be the venues that open first anyway, because obviously, I mean, say there's a 500 capacity venue, they're going to cap it a lot lower.
Yeah, it'll be like 200 or 250.
Yeah. So the tickets will have to be more expensive, but shows with less overheads, so you don't have the big production going out.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it could be very interesting. Pause. Cut. That's it. I'm never working with him again. How unprofessional.
That's me.
That's it. He's done. He's gone. I just want to talk. This is a really hard question, and it stumps everyone for about a minute or so that I've spoken to. Because obviously you've made a huge amount of records. And obviously everyone recently been doing the 10 records that, influenced me. Everyone nominates you to do something. But if you had to pick, let's say 5 things that you've created or helped to create, either played on, produced, wrote, whatever, that not for anything that would you'd be your CV, that's not what I mean, that stand out to you. Tough one. I should have asked you beforehand, but it's kind of fun to see people go, oh, God.
Yeah. So we're not talking about your 5 albums that are your favourites that you've made, or
could be anything. The 5 things that you've done. Because what we're going to do is we put links to everything on Amazon.
Okay. Crikey,
it's tough, isn't it? Because obviously you've gone from Tina Turner through to Killing Joke via Dido and Robbie Williams. It's like
it's crikey. My God, that's a hell of a question. I suppose. I mean, there's a few real standout ones. First of which, and it's always been this one for some reason. Well, I'll give you the story behind it, but there's a girl called Heather Nova, a song called Winter Blue, which is, it was just a moment which it's really difficult to describe, but it was about 6:00 in the evening at Townhouse 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the song, I mean, I don't know if people are familiar with Heather's voice. She's got a very kind of ethereal voice. It's really beautiful. She comes from Bermuda. And it was one of the, we kind of started the song, but it wasn't a formulated start. We just kind of fell into it, if you like. And somehow it just felt like there was 4 people, or was it 5? I think it was 5 people, were just completely in the same place at the same time. It's difficult to put that emotion into words, but we just went on this journey for the length of the song, and at the end of it, there was just complete silence. You could say a word. It was as if, what the fuck just happened there, you know? And these moments are quite rare in many ways. And that's got to be one of them, because that was a really, really special thing. Other ones, blimey.
Sorry.
Oh, kind of another 4 to go.
Well, you could do 3 if you like.
What other ones? There was a very dark record that I did with a guy called Robbie Rosa Draco.
Okay.
Now, I first encountered him when he had a band called Maggie's Dream.
Right.
At that time, I was living in New York. And I used to go with another drummer friend of mine called Sterling Campbell, who used to play with David Bowie for years. And we still really are great friends. And there was a third guy who was in our gang, if you like, called Jack Alford, who played with Springsteen, and he played with Bowie as well, and B-52s, and you name it. And that's where I first met him, Robbie Draco. And then he came over to the UK, and we did it at Phil Manzanera's studio in Gallery Studios. And this record it had people like Brian Ray and Carla Azar, Rusty Anderson, all sorts of great musicians that were on it. And it was a very, very dark, personal story of himself. There's a song on there called Penelope. It's all in Spanish. But Robbie went on to be the songwriter for Ricky Martin.
Right, okay.
But at the time, he was so penniless, we all had to buy his air ticket for him to get home after making the record.
Wow.
And then he became seriously ill, and he got better again, and he's been through a lot. But that was a really sort of intense, and it's funny how I seem to gravitate to these really intense songs. Maybe that's the kind of emotional side of me showing itself, if you like. Number 3 would have to be a song called Whiteout by Killing Joke.
Right.
Now, the first day I ever went to, it was a Sunday morning. I was talking to Youth about this the other day, because Youth and I have become very good friends over the years, because he was the bass player. And I was past something, and anyway, 5 hours later, I managed to pick myself up off the sofa. And you said, in only the way that Youth can, he said, "Oh, I'm not going to play the song, man. Just just play whatever you want when you hear the music start, okay?" So I went in and just did. It was another one-take job, but it was just out. All this stuff just came out. It was like a 1,000,000-mile-an-hour song, really intense, really heavy, and it's all this kind of techno-electro stuff going on underneath it, and Geordie's huge riffs going on. And that was really like kind of explosion, but really memorable for a lot of great reasons and one bad reason.
Was that the first thing you played with them as well?
Yeah, I did that song and Millennium and Pandemonium, all from the Pandemonium album. And we did Ron St. Germain, who used to produce Tool, he was producing it with Youth. And so we did the first sessions. I think we did the second sessions at Townhouse 1, and then I think we did some at Metropolis as well. I'm not sure. It's a bit of a blur back then. No, I'm not laying myself open here.
No, you're not. No.
Because some of these stories don't make sense if you don't have the backstory. So number four. Yeah, probably working with Tina Turner on her Foreign Affair album.
Magic.
And she came in wearing this little tartan miniskirt. And she put her leg on the table and said, "Feel my thighs." And I thought, oh, blimey, what do I do here?
Do I or don't I?
Yeah, if I do it, am I some kind of weirdo? If I don't do it, am I a wussy, So I just went, "Oh, they feel great, Tina." And she said, "You can stay, honey."
Brilliant.
And so we did. But the most amazing thing about her was after she cut the vocal with us live, where we were all playing. It was very old-fashioned in that sense. Graham Lyle was producing it, and Roger Davis, our manager, was kind of there and everything. And after we had cut the track, she came in and we were listening back without the vocal. And we were listening back at really loud level, And she just opened her lungs and she could sing right over the top of this coming at you, And I was kind of like, wow.
Yeah.
I've never heard somebody be able to project like that over this amount of volume coming out of the speakers. And I got talking to her about it, and she said, "Well, you got to remember, I started off in the days before monitors were even invented.
Of course, yeah.
So that it was all about projection. You had to learn how to project, and it's so true. And I guess all the great singers obviously learn how to do that over the years, but something to, again, for people starting out or even people that are already on their way, kind of thing. That so much of it is down to that ability to really let it go. But I tell you, it was a serious eye opener for me. I'd never witnessed anybody who could do something like that.
No, it's pretty amazing.
Magical.
Yeah.
5. I suppose 5 really would be recording the first song on the first album that I ever did for my own band.
Perfect.
I mean, what better moment can that possibly be?
Exactly. Yeah. And what
always dreamt of.
Yeah.
Here you are in the situation, realizing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be one of the most incredible days of your life.
What was the name of the song?
I think the song was called, if I'm correct, I think the song was probably called American People.
Perfect. Good. And I'm glad you mentioned Tina Turner's thighs, because it saves me asking you the question. Because I was going to say, so Geoff, tell everyone about Tina Turner's thighs. What
about you? What do you remember much about doing your first album with the band? Or?
Absolutely, yeah. We were petrified.
Really?
Yeah, because we went to Eden Studios in London. Got there. It's like, oh my God, proper producers. We're in a proper studio. We've got a budget. First person I walk into is Sean Ryder in the kitchen, and he's trying to find some tinfoil. For obvious reasons. Yeah. So then I'm confronted by him, and I was a bit nervous anyway. And then you go into the studio, and they took my guitar out, and the producer's like, "Well, you're not using that piece of shit." And then he got they got out from the cupboard something like a vintage Precision. I'm like, oh my God, this is so proper. I mean, the album was terrible, but that experience was just like, this has suddenly gone up.
Yes,
so many levels.
I totally got you. It's interesting. I'm sure you were probably the same as me, but there wasn't probably a minute, unless you had to go for a pee, that you weren't in the control room all the time.
All the time.
Be obsessing about it.
Yeah.
And it's something I find quite interesting nowadays when you're working with a lot of artists and bands and stuff. The amount of time they're not in the studio.
I know.
They're often doing something else. And you kind of think,
It's weird, isn't it?
if this was my record, I'd be absolutely on it all the time. You know, completely engrossed in it.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I mean, I would sit there listening to, 6 hours of vocal comps.
Yeah.
Whereas you see a lot of people now. Like, well, I've played my part on it.
Yes.
Send it me when it's mixed.
Yeah. But maybe that's the difference between being a band and all that kind of thing. Because there's always a slight sort of competitive edge within bands as well. It's like, oh, if he's not going, I'm not going.
Yeah.
And then I'll go. Sort of thing, There's all that kind of stuff, I think, goes on. Well, I think there was with the band that I had.
Yeah,
anyway.
same. Yeah. Very, very much so.
Right.
Yeah. So what was let's bring it right up to date now. So what was the last thing you were doing before we all had our indefinite pause?
I was in China.
Uh-huh.
I came back from there, when was it? Beginning of December. And at that point, there was nothing going on, and nobody was aware of anything. I came back from there, and then I was down. Actually, I was down in Real World for a couple in February, just before the lockdown started. And since then, somewhere in January, I think, I got hooked up through Natalie Imbruglio's manager, friend of mine. She introduced me to this young guy called George, who's kind of like Bob Marley meets Grace Jones, with a little bit of, kind of a bit Bob Marley meets Grace Jones, I would say. So I've been writing with him.
Right, okay.
For his first album. And I'll be calling on you for on that one.
I'll be there.
I think you'll really like it. I'll send you a little something over later on. But he's a very interesting young kid, and just kind of honing in on songs and arrangements and so on and so forth. But that's been great, and I've got my
beautiful.
And before I forget, I did pull one thing out for you. I do have many years ago, I was given a drum set that used to belong to a fairly famous drummer, and this is one of the drums.
Wow.
It's a 1962.
Oh my God.
And it used to belong to Mitch Mitchell.
I knew that straight away. straight away.
And it doesn't come out very often, as you can imagine.
That is so cool.
Tends to stay in its place. But it's funny, there's a weird thing about it, because the times I do sit behind it, the first thing I automatically go to is playing Manic Depression.
I knew it was going to be Manic Depression as well.
It's just, I don't know why, but you just instantly go there with it.
Yeah.
All the fills.
So cool.
It's great. It's great. I'm lucky to have that.
Yeah. Well, I almost played with him as well.
Really?
Yeah. There was that thing I did. It was in 2008, and it was Shepherd's Bush Empire, and it was supposed to be tribute to Mitch Mitchell, and he was going to be playing. I was going to be playing bass with him, and Jeff Beck was going to be playing. Yada yada. Ginger Baker was going to do a thing. Tony Allen, all that. John Lord, etc., etc. Unfortunately, he then passes away. So then it became a tribute to Ginger Baker, which was less of a. It was still an experience, but less of a pleasant experience.
But you just made me think about something, because I figure that you and I probably were influenced and inspired by a lot of similar music.
Absolutely.
Because when you go instinctively to play, you play exactly the kind of things that I go, oh yeah,
exactly, yeah. No, but that's because that's what made us fall in love with music, and they're the sort of things that we kind of, in our own sort of slightly spazzy way, when we were starting out, tried to understand and play.
Yeah.
And that always never leaves you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It doesn't ever leave you. That whole kind of sense of adventure and fun and learning and all the rest of it. That's what the whole thing's so infectious.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting out in front of an audience. I mean, once you've had that taste of that,
I know.
Tough one to put back in the cupboard.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, actually, you should mention that, because there's that weird thing, particularly when you've been away doing quite a lot of shows, like the touring thing. It's when you get back to the real life, not even going in, which may encompass going in the studio, not generally straight away, though. Is that weird dislocation you feel from everyday stuff. Because it's that adrenaline rush of going, even if it's a tour playing to clubs or stadiums,
whatever, yeah.
It's still the same.
Yeah.
It's not nerves, it's the adrenaline rush. Getting rid of all that adrenaline, then the wind down, and the camaraderie of all the people you're on tour with. And then you're taken out of that.
Your family.
Yeah.
But then there's one element of it I think that we always have to keep in mind is, you know, if you're working with really big artists, you know, it's their world, it's their reality, should I say.
Yes.
It's not our reality.
Yes.
Our reality is on the scale of it, our reality's down here, you know, their reality's up there. And I always remember the very first big tour I ever went on in 1986 or 87 with a band called the Thompson Twins.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, there we are floating around the world. First time I'd really been doing something, you know, playing at Madison Square Garden and blah, 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 blah. And when I got back, I was such a twit, you know, I really was. It was, you know, I was like, yeah. And thankfully I had some good friends who gave me a good slapping and said, oi, you know, behave, you for God's sake, you know. You're not them, you're you.
Yeah.
It was such a massive wake-up call at that moment, but something that was kind of invaluable in so many ways.
Of course, yeah.
Later down the line, you know, you're with Johnny Hallyday, who I worked with for a long time. He had a private jet every day of the week, and we'd be floating in and out and here and there, and it's like, but yeah, it's great fun, but it's not my reality, and don't forget. It's very easy to sort of lose yourself in it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Back down to earth, it's a hell of a bump.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. So, last question, super easy one. What are you listening to at the minute?
At the moment, I'm listening to a guy called Nate Wood, an album called Fall. Really clever chord structure, very clever. I'll send you a link to it afterwards. And I've been listening a lot to the soundtrack of Death in Venice.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And some Chet Baker.
Yeah.
And a lot of old French music.
Okay.
There's something about it which is very jolly, one of a better word. And in the current situation, I don't want sort of dark, well, having said that, Mahler's Fifth Symphony Adagio. That's more late night as opposed to first thing in the morning.
Yeah. That's going to set the day off on an uneven keel.
Yeah, excuse me, I'll just get the razor blade out. And that's the main thing. A lot of old, actually I've been getting into a lot of old Northern Soul. Right, okay. Pure Northern Soul stuff. There's Radio London DJ Billy Greaves, who sent me this fantastic compilation of, because he's right into all that kind of stuff. And I love all that old old Northern soul stuff. There's something about it which is, it's just a little bit left of Motown.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been listening to that, a lot of Philly kind of style music.
Breaking the Water, as always.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, the first time I ever heard that, I was in my bed. I was about 9 years old. It was one of these little old Bakelite transistors with the one ear.
One earpiece, yeah.
And it was Radio Caroline. And it was back in the days when the signal would kind of go, and you get the music and you get these stuff. And I remember listening to it and thinking, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
I never heard anything like it in my life. It was just like, wow. Yeah. And of course, I didn't know who it was because they just kept playing records. Took me quite a few years to, I think I was maybe in my 20s before I figured out who it was, you know, or got the vibe on it. But that was, I mean, what an awesome singer she is.
Yeah. Yeah, all of it. It's that, I mean, that track itself is a good, actually in a weird way, and I'm generalizing ridiculously, but that kind of sums up everything we've been talking about, that one track, going from, you know, Tina Turner's projection to people playing together with integrity and excitement. Because the sound of that record, that Breaking the Water, with the vocal and the groove and everything in it.
Yeah, it's just sublime.
It is sublime.
It's absolutely a piece of art.
Yes.
It should be framed and in the Tate Modern or wherever.
Yeah, yeah.
The Smithsonian Institute.
That's it. That's where it should be.
One of the wonders of the world.
Yeah, there it is, right there.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Well, Geoff, the ninth wonder of the world after Breaking the Water of UK music. Geoff Dugmore, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.